we're still talking about how this is becoming, to me, it's becoming interesting because we're talking about immigrants, in other words, people that move from one country to another, and how they actually, people who have done that, people who have lived in different cultures, have an advantage over people who have never moved to different cultures, have several advantages. So I know that Anne-Marie has lived in several cultures. And Abu wants to, and as long as he keeps wanting to, it'll happen. And Zabi, hello.
Hello, Professor. Hello, Abu. Hello, ma'am. How is everyone?
Zabila.
I'm fine.
I'm doing great.
That's good. That's awesome.
So I know that Zabi is living in India, but he started out in Afghanistan. So he too has lived in different cultures. Let's see, Adnan, where have you, what country?
I'm from a little city, not big, here. And also our culture in our country, like Islam. And I lives in like a simple life, spend a simple life, not more much, and just relaxed life. I think it's enough.
Have you moved from one place to another in your life?
No, but it's my dream to move there in another.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about what happens when we move from one place, from one culture to another. What happens to us?
It's not easy to, yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, I think that when you can move from one culture or culture to another cultures of other peoples, so it's much difficult to over that to adjust in other culture, because every people have different mindset and different cultures and spend different life and different styles. And I think that it's not easy to every people.
That's true.
Yeah.
And what's not easy, what the biggest thing that's not easy is that you have to figure out who you are in the new culture.
Yeah, first you can enter in new culture, you can introduce who are you and why. I think that, and then you can adjust over in a new culture then.
Yeah. So Karen, what kinds of things did you experience when you first moved into a city?
When I first moved into the city, I think that what I really missed when I moved into the city were my own little community roots. People that I knew, we talked about the same things. We had activities that we did that were similar. And in the city, there were many more things to do and people who were involved in activities like ballet. That's not something I could do from my small town.
Right, exactly.
But I actually in the city started taking ballet lessons as an adult.
Interesting.
Right after I had my first child.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got it, worked on making those associations with what was going on, but it's not easy. And I didn't exactly identify with the chapter on immigrants, but I thought it was so interesting. And I thought of my friend Emily, who
Mhm.
immigrated, and I can't wait to discuss it with her because
Oh, yeah.
thing.
It will be an interesting discussion. But the point I'm making is that you basically had the immigrant experience between the country and the city.
Well, I tell you what, it was more of a shock moving then from the city back to the country
Oh, okay.
into a smaller country setting. When I moved from Durham to Roxborough, that was like the biggest culture shock I'd had in a long time.
Okay.
I mean, the service people would still come out at the gas stations and pump your gas. I had not had that for years. So,
Right. Yes. So then you had to be prepared to socialize.
yes, that wasn't easy either.
Right. Yep. So that's one of the big differences between urban and rural living, is that in small towns or in the countryside, you have a community of people probably that you've known all your life if it's where you came from. And it's very different in cities. And I guess, I mean, personally, I've run away from being in a small place where everybody knows me. I want some anonymity, where I can do what I want to do when I want to do it and how I want to do it. You can't really do that in the small town where you grew up, if it was a small town. So to me, that's one of the benefits of urban living.
Mm-hmm.
And also of international living, because that's kind of the move from city to country, country to city, but on steroids, with a lot of things involved. Okay, so one thing is, how sociable are you? So, how sociable do you want to be? How involved with other people do you want to be? That's one aspect of all of our identities. We all have our own take on that. And I know that when I moved to France, which I had lived for a couple of months in Quebec, but the first time that I moved away from home, I went to France and stayed there for 3 years. And then I was too isolated. It was hard to make friends in a new culture. So, that was a balance that was hard to achieve in a new country. Okay. So what other changes occur when you move from one place to another, one country, one culture, when you have to adapt to a new culture? Zabi?
I would say actually that for me it was an identity crisis, like, because now that I'm a refugee, like what happened is, initially what happened was when I came to India, I was like, because you are being brought up in a very religious family, and in a religious family also you are the follower of faith of Islam, and also that one interpretation of Islam. Even you do not have exposure to the diversity of your own religion. So when I came to India, I was in a debate club with the students. So when I sat there, they said, let's discuss that God is the source of all evil. And I was like, I was about to, fight with that person, that no, this is not the case. And I reacted in a very bad manner, and I was really insecure about my religion. So that really taught me a lot of things. They were very good friends of mine because I was not brought up in a city, in Kabul city. I was brought up in a very locality of Afghanistan, in a remote place. So I didn't have any exposure to the different religions. So I came to a Christian university, and I had never seen anybody from different faiths. So it was really, really a different, shocking experience for me because I had never experienced. And India, it's like to a very different level because in Hinduism there are different traditions that you get to experience. And initially you can choose two paths. One is to be an egoistic person that my faith says this and I'm like the center of the universe, or you can see others by humility and see other people uh, as rich in their traditions, which makes your worldview very broad. If I had studied for 20 years in Afghanistan, I believe I would not have gained this experience that I have gained in this 5 years or 7 years. So I'm really amazed by the different traditions that I experienced here. So that made me become a better Muslim because I used to believe something, but I used to believe that that's the only truth, and that's the one case. But as well, that when you experience different traditions, you become humble. You read their tradition as well. So it was really a really good thing for me. It was really life changing.
Okay. So one of the likely differences that we need to negotiate when we move from one culture to another is, okay, we grew up with all the beliefs, and now we're in a different context. And how do we relate to our starting beliefs, to the beliefs that we had? Do we keep them? Do we evaluate them and shift how we feel about them? I mean, that's one of the big changes that we need to make when we live in a different context than what we were used to. Anne-Marie, I know that you had some interesting intercultural experiences when you were younger. What stuck out to you about them?
Actually, whenever I moved quite several times from one country to another, and also different cultures. And in the beginning, it was always wondering, what is there? What is it? And I had the feeling I'm quite cute. So certain things which I believed or which I thought it has to be like this or like that had no more value. Suddenly, everything was new. And for me, I found out the best thing is not to compare anything, just to take it as it is at this very specific moment. And slowly like this, I got familiar with the persons, with the culture, with their religion. And suddenly all this, let me say, foreign things in the beginning became familiar to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was different afterwards. I was no more Anne-Marie as I was when I was just living in Switzerland in a small city, and where also everybody knew everybody.
Yes, right.
But I was different, and I found out that whenever I came back home, it was in the beginning difficult for me to understand their narrow thinking, yeah, it was not their mistake. I don't blame anyone, but I could not understand when I explained or when I said something that they could not understand it.
That's right.
It was
It
not possible for them because they were not experienced what I experienced. And I feel this is quite an important lesson I learned, that everybody has his own experiences. Everybody looked from his own way of life, from its own roots. And if we go to the roots of the other one, we learn a lot. If we shut down, then then we remain in our shells. This is what I learned.
Very nicely said, I think.
Thank you.
When we learn the paradigms, the culture of the other people that we now have the opportunity to get to know, it changes us. And more than anything, we become aware that, okay, we are this, and we can also be this, and we can also be this, and we can still be ourselves. It's a real change in what we believe about who we are. So we need at that point to become more flexible and more skillful at negotiating change. Irina, the author of the book, commented in this chapter that research has shown, both with mammals and with humans who are also mammals, that the more flexible the individual has had to be, the bigger their brain gets. Physically, it just gets bigger. It has more connections. And, that's a way of thriving. So, in fact, having the experience of moving from one culture to another, moving back again, then going to another one, keeps us flexible and adaptable. And we need to keep changing really basic, important things. Like, we need to adapt what we believe is true about ourselves and about life. Because belief is something that we have concluded, we may have learned it from someone else, but we also accept that this is the way things are. But when we encounter experiences that contain a different reality, then we have two choices at that point. We can either, kind of go in a hole and hide and not learn and not change. I know people who've done that. You probably do too. Or we can say, okay, this doesn't seem true anymore, what I grew up believing. I have to change my belief so that it, once again, is possible, conforms with what I know from experience. And when we keep exploring different experiences as we go along, we have to keep changing our beliefs, and that's good. It's good for us, and it's also good for the world. Because once we realize that, oh, the way that I grew up thinking what was absolute truth, I had to shift it, because then I had other experiences. But that makes me realize why and how we come to our beliefs, and we realize what belief is. And then we can more easily get to know someone from a different culture, a different context, and understand that, okay, their beliefs are not exactly the same as mine because their experience hasn't been exactly the same as mine. And that's okay. That's the way humans are. That's the way, and truth belongs to everybody. So it's a very important experience to have and to examine and to become conscious of for peace among people, and for peace within ourselves. We need to have a sense of who we are and be okay with that. Because whatever we don't like about who we know about that we are, then we don't like ourselves. And you can't live in peace if you don't like yourself, if you don't accept yourself. So Lena, on Facebook, I don't know how many people saw it. I think I'm going to ask her to share it on Living Peace Now. She made a whole list of who she is. And it was interesting. You know, not only her physical and her ethnic and her, you know, her family being, but also what she knows about herself, what she has learned is important for herself. And it was a lovely list. It started out with woman, Black. I don't know if you've met Lena. I wouldn't call her Black, but she's of African descent, partially at least. What else did she say? You know, those Christian, those were things that, you know, are just true about her. And then she said she likes animals. She believes in justice. She, you know, she actually defined in about 10 different ways who she sees herself as. And I think that would be a very interesting thing to ask everybody who's on Living Peace Now to do for themselves, so we all get to know each other. What's important to us about ourselves? I think that.
Fill up books.
What?
We can fill up books.
Well, yeah. We could all write a book for sure. We don't need to do that. But, you know, 10, 12 things that you want us to know about you, that are important to you, about you. When I was 20 years old, I still identified as Catholic, for instance. Now, I mean, after a lifetime of exploring, learning about being in different places and different cultures and different beliefs, I don't identify myself even as Christian. I am spiritual. I am very interested in what makes the world work and who humans are in the world. But I am not particularly Christian even at this point, certainly not Catholic. I mean, you know, I could say that I'm multi-faith because I have studied many Buddhist teachers, for instance, and a fair number of Islamic teachers and some Jewish mysticism and indigenous shamanism. And I have found not different concepts, but different ways of phrasing the basic concepts that have been helpful to me in all of those traditions. So my concept of who I am in regard to the universe has been influenced by many traditions. Oh, is this, are you sharing what Lena said about herself, Abu?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ah,
So Abu just put in the chat what Lena posted about herself.
But that's beautiful.
Yes, I think all of us,
nice.
if we really shared what's important to us about ourselves, it would be beautiful with everybody. So that's one really important aspect of identity, is that it's cumulative. We build it throughout our lives as we have different experiences, as we learn from different places, different cultures, different languages. There is something about speaking, you know, really deeply different languages that shapes our ability, our breadth, our range of ideas. When I lived in France, I learned the hard way that there were things that I could say in English that there is no way to say in French. And I learned also that there are some wonderful things that I'd learned to say in French that I could never explain to someone who did not speak French. And those are the two languages that I know the best. But it comes up every day in my life that I want to say something. I'm here in the United States, and I want to say something that I know because I speak French, but I can't say it anyhow, because you can't say it in English. It's not an idea that exists in English. And I had a really interesting conversation with Anne-Marie a couple of weeks ago, where she was telling me about words that she wanted to say in English. I couldn't tell her because they were not.
Or no words.
There were no words for that in English, right?
Do
We
you
had to
recall-
make a new vocabulary for these words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was very interesting to realize, oh, there's no way to say that in English.
It gives no sense.
Made no sense, right?
Yeah. And this is why you can never translate word to word.
Right, exactly.
You always have to translate the sentence.
Mhm.
If you do it word by word, I mean,
It doesn't work.
not possible.
Right.
I just have one thing. Once I had a Tibetan girl who was living for 1 year with me. She was a refugee,
Mhm.
and she was unhappy in the center she was in. And as I was in India with a refugee camp, somehow we got in touch. And then one day she came to me and said, Anne-Marie, what shall I cook? And then I said in Swiss German, I said, es ist mir wurscht. And without realizing that she might not understand, I will translate it afterwards, what I said. After some time, she came back, Anne-Marie, I'm sorry, there are no sausages in the refrigerator. And I looked at her and I thought, what does she mean, no sausages? I didn't say anything about sausages. So when I say, es ist mir Wurst, Wurst means sausage. But the translated context is actually, I don't care. You just do whatever you like. And she was searching for sausages.
Looking through the depths of the refrigerator, right?
Right,
Trying to find a sausage.
And then I realized that Swiss German, that my language is talking in images, in pictures. And I love it, you know, it's very boomy and
Yeah, right.
But you just simply cannot translate. It's not possible. There are a number of words like this. We had this talk last time, and it is fascinating. I was once having with a Canadian. We were having a small little quarrel because he thought that I'm making fun of him. No, I was not. And then in the end, I told him, "You make." He was translating one of my books. Then I said, "You make a vocabulary and you say this word means this one." And then 3 weeks later, he said, "Anne-Marie, I have the solution." I make a vocabulary, actually exactly what I told him.
Yeah.
And then, okay, it doesn't matter who had the idea. Most important was it was done.
Yes.
He could not understand me because it was not possible for him to understand me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was interesting.
It is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the flexibility that we learn when we deal with different languages and different dialects. I have done the vocabulary and the grammar of a dialect of French in the middle of the US. But it took me like a couple of years to actually learn all the expressions and all the words that I didn't know, because they were typical of Louisiana French in 300 years ago. And I had to carry on conversations with people for a couple of years before I finally got to where I understood all of the vocabulary. And that's about what it takes, even in the same language. Zabi, I expect that you have experienced that, possibly with Arabic. Could that be true? Is he there?
Like he is.
You're okay. So you probably have met people who speak Arabic, but who come from different countries, right?
They don't understand each other.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, I understand Arabic a little bit because as a religious foundation of Islam, it came the Quran came by Arabic language. So a Muslim has to understand the basic Arabic to be able to read Quran. So that's why wherever you go, the basic Arabic, not a lot, but at least people will understand Arabic at least a little bit,
At least a little bit, yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's spoken in families, say, in different countries. My guess is that people from, I don't know, Pakistan and people from Iran and people from Afghanistan probably sound different when they speak Arabic.
There's one thing with Arabic, that Arabic alphabet are same as Persian. Actually, they are Persian and Urdu. Urdu is spoken in Pakistan, Persian is spoken in Afghanistan and in Iran, and also Pashto. These alphabets are 99% the same. So there are one or two alphabets different in these 3-4 languages. So that's
Okay.
why when you understand the alphabet, then you can read Arabic, you can read Urdu, you can read Persian. So when you read it, then things are easy to understand
Okay.
different languages.
Yeah,
Like
reading.
now I understand Urdu, I understand Pashto, I understand Persian, so a little bit Arabic.
Yeah, when a language is written, it stabilizes it so that it doesn't evolve as quickly or as much between one place and another. So yeah, the fact that everybody has the same text in Arabic would help to keep the language more stabilized than it would otherwise be. And that's another variable in different countries, different cultures, rural to urban, is that when you get away from written academic texts or religious texts, the language is much more changeable. So for instance, Anne-Marie's Swiss German varies, is a lot more colorful and varied than High German, which has texts that help to stabilize it. And that's true for all of us in the English, for the Americans, in the English that we grew up speaking. At least, 60, 70 years ago, people knew the local way of speaking English, which has gone away because of television.
Mhm.
So, when I get together with my family, we go back to speaking the English that we grew up speaking, which sounds really weird to to everybody else from other regions
Hi,
of the
Professor.
country. Kazi, hi. We're talking about all the different things that you have to add and learn and change in yourself when you move from one culture to another. For instance, people who are the first person in their family to get a university education, generally speaking, their way of speaking, their way of thinking changes dramatically from that of their other relatives who did not get that education. They become bidialectal, sometimes bilingual, but they have to be able to function in both settings. And that experience builds your brain and really, is a benefit to mental capacity throughout life. And it's interesting to see that the educated young people of today, they're like, oh, it's a different language. Okay, I'll learn it. It's really quite amazing that has become a cultural norm, because certainly it wasn't at all when I was growing up. Another language, I don't speak it, I don't know it, I can't go there. It's a very different attitude.
Mm.
And it's interesting how those values change. Another flexibility that immigrants or people who have moved in their lives, which today is a huge majority of people, need to acquire is with friendships. You know, I mean, I was married for a long time to a guy whose only friends were the people, the other two guys that he still knew from high school, from lycée, from école secondaire, from secondary education. He never made any friends his whole life. But that's a disadvantage because over a lifetime, your relationship doesn't stay the same with people that you knew when you were a child or even an adolescent. And so, you know, today he is much more lonely than I am because I've made friends all my life in many different places, in many different contexts, and I still am making new friends. So that expectation and ability to gather, to create new relationships goes along with evolving your sense of who you are, of what your identity is. And, you know, the people that move have that advantage. So what else would you want to say about the challenges of moving and how that could benefit anybody?
For me, the whole world is a university. So it is a great feeling. I don't have to go into a building with the name of university. That actually the university is open every day for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can step into nature, to physics, anything, languages, everything is there. And this is what I tell Suleimane in Mali. I say, the whole world, all outside is your university. Learn what you find there. Read in the book of nature, in the book of the human beings, and then you are always having every book around you.
That's right.
In your language. In your language.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely true. That, wow, the variety of species and kinds of consciousness. And yes, I agree, Karen. Wise words.
Thank you, Karen.
So I'm going to ask everybody who's here to make a list of who you are. Who do you want people in this moment? What do you want people in this moment to know about you? Because that's stabilizing. You know, if we include in who we are, if we include our roots and our later additions, it creates a stable sense of being, which is important, which when we are challenged or when, you know, we have a problem, it gives us a place to start off from. It gives us a sense of, okay, I have a lot of capabilities. I have a lot of skills. There, you know, I should be able to figure it out, to find a solution to the problems, because I have, as a, let me say, as a world citizen, as a person who has moved and explored and adapted, I have a lot of skills and a lot of abilities. So I just need to be able to figure out this next one and add it to my catalog of skills and ways of being. Okay? So I'll be interested to see, and I guess I'll just ask everybody to put it in the chat next Friday, what your list of who am I, what your list is. Okay?
Okay.
It should be fun. I think we'll all learn things about ourselves and each other. And I mean, when I read Lena's list, it was like, wow, that's cool. She, she has some characteristics that she has adopted as part of herself that are very attractive and interesting. Okay? So we're going to start next week. We're going to start chapter 4, which begins on page, well, it's here somewhere. Here it is. Begins on page 91.
Okay. There was one thing I wanted to point out in chapter 3, if I may.
Please.
And I thought it was very positive. It's on page 80. And there's so many negative things, even in our own, we say about ourselves as US citizens. And we're this and we're that. We really put ourselves down a lot. And I thought the paragraph 3, the numbers don't really come, well, after all, the US has been built by immigrants, and it makes sense that it has retained that entrepreneurial spirit, as opposed to the Soviet Union, where there's a single national entity. The United States has allowed people and their roots to thrive as they used to. And even though we have racism and that kind of thing, we still have that freedom of choice. And I loved reading the positive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing we need to know is that every negative has a positive, and the positive pole and the negative pole are all part of the same idea. So, we may approach something by the negative pole, but we're still experiencing it. And it doesn't matter. So you don't have to be a goody two-shoes to thrive. Okay. Anne-Marie already did a first draft of hers. You want to read it? Anne-Marie?
Yeah. You want me to read it?
Sure.
I'm a woman, an oldie, white. Actually, I could put gray hair and green-blue eyes. Grandma, round, interreligious, free, open-minded, interested in the universe I live in, courageous, I love to learn, love new opportunities, I love languages. I love to design, write. I love the daily life, and so on. I fill a book.
Okay.
I,
And you are writing a book.
I'm constantly writing. That's right.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I love to do it.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's another way of characterizing what's important to us about who we are is what do we love about ourselves? What do we love to do and to be? So, are you guys on board with this?
yeah, I've already written half of mine, I think, too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. So, Abu
Is
and
everybody
Kazi,
putting it in chat, or was it
Yeah.
not the meaning to put it in chat?
yeah. But I'm not going to consider what you write today your final draft.
Okay, I've done my job.
So that's one thing about you is that you're
Yes.
very dutiful.
Mhm. Do it today and not tomorrow. Tomorrow you might have other interests.
Mhm. But that is something that as I've built friendship with you, as I have felt friendship with you, I've been very aware that you are very dutiful.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. So I'll look forward to seeing you next Friday with your final draft or present draft lists of what you love about yourself, and I'll share mine too.